Hello everybody. I thought I would take a few minutes to talk about the Typography Promotional Poster project. And although we've already had a brief introduction about that, I thought I would just show you how to get started. Just to review about starting a new document in Illustrator, when you open up the program, you're going to get a screen that looks a lot like this. There's some presets, but I would recommend going to Create New over here on the left-hand side. Click that. Now, I don't have a prescribed dimension for this project. It's really up to you. One of the more common sizes that people use for posters is 11 by 17. So we can set that up that way if you would prefer, but you can use whatever dimension you want. It can even be a square. So I'm going to change from pixels to inches. And let's go with 17 for the width and 11 for the height. Then we're going to hit Create New. And it's just going to give us a blank window to start with. 11 by 17 is like a standard print size that any place like Kinko's or Office Max will print that size. So that's kind of why I picked it. But our final project will be turned in as a digital file, a PDF, so it doesn't need to be any size for printing. But if you're not sure, you can go with that one. So just for talking about how to get started, one of the things that you'll notice in Illustrator is that unlike Photoshop, there's no fill for the background. So the easiest way to start with a colored document rather than being stuck with plain white is just to draw in a background shape. So you're going to select your rectangle tool. You're going to drag over that. You're going to double click the fill over here on the left hand side. And we're going to go with a very bright red for our screen here. And you can obviously fill that in with any color you want. There's even there's a gradient option. That's the third one that's in there, in between color and none. You can do the drop-down menu for that, and there'll be different options for you for the gradient tool and different patterns and things like that you can play around with. I'm going to save the gradient demonstration for another time, but if you want to do a side investigation, you can look up how to change the colors of the gradient. You can go from radial to gradual and play around with that. And you might just be able to play around with the gradient yourself and find different ways to do that. But again, that's a whole other probably 20-30 minute discussion to really get into the gradient. So we're going to save that for another time. But just keep in mind that that can be done. And it'll save it as the gradient that you're working with. So we're going to start with our red poster here for us. You're welcome to use the gradient tool for this if you choose to, by the way. And you're going to pick out your one single type, and we want to promote that type. So the one that I'm choosing is going to be, well, the one I thought about choosing because it's so common and there's so much about it, would be Helvetica. And just remember that the poster needs to have the title. Might have to start over with this. Let's see here. Acting kind of strange for me here. The title needs to be in the poster. And always, when you're working with text, always keep the Shift key on hand so that you keep the proportion, especially with type, because type looks really bad if it's smushed. So holding Shift down, see if I hold the Shift key down, I know you can't see the keyboard, but as I hold Shift key down, it keeps the perfect proportion of the type. That's real important for this project, so keep that in mind. Okay, so you can if you had 2D design with me, you can keep in mind that this is a lot like that. This project's a lot like that first assignment you did where you came up with an icon and you arranged them on the page in an interesting way. So you can even have the text going off the edge of the page. Some of the examples that I showed you did that. Okay, and what we can do is, you could play around with, I'm just kind of doing a quick example here of ways to play around with the text. You could stack them. But just like that first project that I had with 2D design where you arrange the icons, you want the project to move the viewer's eye around the canvas. Okay, when I say canvas, I just mean the workspace here, your composition. You want it to have like a sense of flow to it, sense of rhythm. We can vary the size a little bit here. Oh, it didn't like that very much, did it? Okay. Let's play around with these letters. Move them around a little bit. I'm just kind of creating like a really, I always think about when I'm working on my posters, if this was like the size of a billboard or a big poster in a store, would it really grab anyone's attention? Is it have a boldness to it? And so with that in mind, I think simplicity can sometimes be the best. Now you'll notice my letters are going off the page here, and that's okay for this project, but as the letters go off the page, as if I save this as a PDF, it's going to clip that edging right there. So I'm not going to have to worry about any of these letters. What I'm trying to say is the edge of the window screen or the composition is where it will cut off. So don't worry about stuff going off the edge, because in your final project, you're not really going to see that. All right. So I'm going to make some more text here. And now I'm holding down the mouse and I'm dragging out the text icon, and it automatically defaults this text in here, right? Well, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to go to Edit and Paste. Now, I've actually preloaded some information here about the text Helvetica. That's one thing that you can do for this poster if you want to just kind of think about things that can fill the space of your poster. The history or any information that you have about the text can do that. Now, not everybody's font or not everybody's text will have that information available. So keep in mind that that's not required. So if you pick something off dafont.com, for instance, remember that that information may not necessarily be there for you. You may not know how much is there, how much to work with. So that's okay if you don't have that. If you can't find anything about your text, that's okay. We're going to enlarge this a little bit. Right now it's a 12-point font. And let's see, it looks good maybe somewhere around there. Got kind of an interesting design element here. Then I can still go into my text and work with bold. I can have one of the elements be bigger if I want to do that. If you have used Photoshop, not everybody has, but if you have used Photoshop, then the text icons or the text tools work very, very similar. So you'll find it to be fairly intuitive. And then at this point, we can use the shape tools to do interesting things, or you can use the paintbrush tools to draw things in. Let's say I just want to take my star tool, and as we used with our logo before, I'm going to switch. I click the star tool down, and I want just 3 points. So my star tool now became a triangle tool. I'm just thinking about design elements that I can bring in to my poster. And I'm going to create sort of an underlining effect here for Helvetica. So I'm going to use this. Right now it's sort of a pyramid, but I want it to be off center. So I'm just using my direct selection tool, which is the black arrow. I'm kind of getting it a little bit positioned here. Now I want to take the top point of my pyramid and I want to move it over here. Okay, so it gives me sort of a triangular underlining effect for my letters that are moving across the page. Okay, so I'm going to switch over to my direct selection tool, which is the white arrow on the toolbox bar. I'm going to click off the screen, and by doing that, it's not going to grab the whole thing, so just clicking into the red. Now if I hover my direct selection tool over that top anchor point, can you see that on the screen? If I hover that over that anchor point, it's going to let me click it, select it, and now it's going to let me move as I select those anchor points. It's going to allow me to move them around and create a new shape out of it. And this is sort of what I had in mind. So I'm sort of having this design element underline the Helvetica. I think it looks kind of interesting if it goes off the page. Kind of creates an arrow effect. Didn't originally intend that, but now I'm sort of liking that. We've got a design element here. Looking pretty interesting. You know that you've got your type on a path tool where you can do the pencil tool without a stroke or a fill, and then you can use your text. If you want to review that, look back to my lesson about the pencil logo that we did. Okay, your letters can also, they don't have to be filled in, so you can select your text letters and have the if you go over to the swap, fill, and stroke, you can have your letters be outlined but not filled in. That's okay with me. And what I'm doing is I'm selecting those individual line letters, clicking the little boomerang that swaps the fill and the stroke and gives me more of a dynamic thing. Now if I wanted to spend more time at it, I could have shapes that are in the background behind my text. Remember, you can always select, and the stroke refers to the line or the outline of the text. I can go up to the stroke at the top and change the point value. So that was a 10 point. I'm going to go to a 5 point. Oops, that's not the one I meant to select. Let's say we leave that at maybe a 2 point. Select this middle one here. There we go. And so now we've scaled it gradually from the 10 point font down to the 2 point or 3. And you can see that now we have like sort of bold letters that are fading to more outlined letters. So, you know, just in a few short minutes here, we've created a little graphic design poster for Helvetica. The information is in there. We've got some design elements, and then we've got the bold word Helvetica kind of moving in the space across the poster. So I would encourage you to go even further in depth than what I've done here, but this is just to give you an idea about how you can get started, how you can move objects around the page, things that could be useful to you, and also, like I said, how to start the background so that you've got, you know, I just switched over to the gradient tool here. You've got how you can work with a solid color background or a gradient background. Hopefully that's helpful to you a little bit. I do want to remind you about saving the posters once you've completed it. Okay, so while you're just working and you plan on coming back and working on the project at a different point, You want to save that as an Illustrator file. So you want to go up to File at the top, Save As. I'm just going to save to computer here. Keep it easy. Okay. Now, make sure always pay attention to where you're saving it. I'm just going to switch to desktop here. Now, right now it says Format Adobe Illustrator, which is .ai. So your file will have .ai at the end, which stands for Adobe Illustrator. Okay. That is the file that is the working file. And what that means is that your post or your project can be reopened in Illustrator, and then you can edit it and change it around. Okay, so it's like the equivalent of a .psd for Photoshop, if you remember that. Okay, so that would be the file that you always create. Make a change here. Always create an Adobe Illustrator file. It's probably a good idea to do it as soon as you open the project, before you even get to this point. And then you're going to hit save. And that .ai file, that's the one that you open up and you can rework. Okay. Now, when you're completely done with your project, you don't want to send me a .ai file. Those tend to be very large. And you can't open it on a computer that doesn't have Adobe Illustrator. And let's face it, most computers don't, unless you're a graphic designer, right? So what you want to do for your final file, go to Adobe or change the format to PDF, Adobe PDF. Now, when I switch that file, notice how it changed to .pdf at the end of the file name there. And that's important to have that so you don't have a corrupt file. The title of the file can be the same, but the .pdf, so that doesn't override the Adobe Illustrator file. That file should still be there, and that's okay. For every project that I ever work on, I save the working file, which is the .ai file, and I also save the PDF file, which will be the final version. By the way, if you ever want to change your project to, after you clicked Adobe PDF, this window pops up. Everything looks great. We'll just view it, but there's not much you really need to worry about in this. Compatibility tends to be the default, which is fine. And as long as it's like the newer version of Acrobat, it'll be completely fine. PDF's a real flexible file. So I click OK, and this pops up. This is the PDF file that I saved. Notice how the clipping is there. So the stuff that just went off the edge of the window file, we don't see that, like I said. And this is the file that we're working with. And you can create as many as you want, by the way. So if you want to do a version that has the red background or a different color background, you want to change stuff, you can go to File, Save As, just change the title so it doesn't override it. Helvetica Poster 2.pdf, going to save to the desktop. Same window pops up, save PDF, and voila, there's another version. So you can save as many PDFs as you want, but I always recommend keeping that .ai Adobe Illustrator file, so you can always come back to this and change stuff later, because I would have a difficult time then going in and taking this file and changing it. Keep that Adobe Illustrator file handy. So hopefully that gets you started thinking about how to design your poster. If you have any questions, please email me and be glad to answer those. Thank you for your time. You guys have a great day.